finally refused to rescue my brother from his own mess, and now my parents are cursing me with cancer. I, 26F, honestly feel like I'm at my breaking point and need some outside perspective because I'm either going crazy or just finally waking up. Growing up, my brother, 24 male, was always the golden child. He got to do everything I wasn't allowed to. He had freedom, friends, he could go out, date, live like a normal teenager. Meanwhile, I wasn't allowed any of that. If I even questioned it, I'd get the "he's a boy, it's different" response. That excuse was drilled into me for years, and I'm still resentful of how much I missed out on just because of that double standard. For context, we are Balkan Muslims and this is pretty common for us women to not get treated the same as our male relatives. Now I'm married with a child of my own. I live an hour away from my parents, and while I don't mind helping them here and there, I've got a household, a job, and a toddler to take care of. Lately, they've been needing more help with bills, paperwork, appointments, organizing their estate, and guess who's been handling all of that? Me. Not the son who lives with them rent-free with his GF and has all the free time in the world. It's become too much and I told my parents I can't keep doing everything, and they need to start asking their son to step up. They weren't happy, but for about a week, things were quiet. I wasn't getting flooded with texts and calls. I thought they were finally listening and my brother finally grew up. This past weekend I went to visit and immediately saw a giant pile of paperwork, unopened mail, and bills scattered on the table. I asked what was going on and why it was all untouched. They told me they'd asked my brother to take care of it and he kept saying he'd get to it. I asked where he was, and surprise. He was out with his friends. My parents asked me to do it and I said no, and we were going to wait until he came home and he was going to do it. No more excuses. An hour later, he walks in, doesn't even greet me, just says, "Have you done mom and dad's paperwork yet?" I looked at him and said, "No, this is your job now. You live here, you handle it." He starts whining that I'm better at organizing, I know what gets paid when, I can translate things better, I know where everything goes. I told him I don't care, I have my own life and family to take care of, and it's not my responsibility to keep doing everything just because no one ever taught him how to be an adult. He got mad and things escalated. He started yelling, insulting me, and at one point picked up a binder full of documents and threw them at me and it hit my head. I just stared at him and waited for my parents to say something, to defend me, to check him for that behavior and for throwing a binder at me. Instead, they looked at me and said it's my fault and I started it and I should have just shut up and done the paperwork like always. I snapped. I started yelling at them all, saying everything I've bottled up for years. I told them that they raised a spoiled, lazy manchild who can't do a basic task and will throw them into a nursing home the first change he gets. I told them I was done being the one who carries all the weight while he gets to live carefree. I grabbed my things and told them I couldn't stand this family anymore and I hated them all. As I was walking out, they said if I left and refused to help, they would have nothing to do with me. I said fine. I left and haven't spoken to them since. Now they're blowing up my phone. First asking for help. My brother saying he doesn't know where the checkbooks are, how to write a check, who's my mom and dad's doctor, insurance, etc. When they saw I wasn't responding the text they got nasty. They began calling me selfish, heartless, and cruel. My dad left a voicemail wishing that I would get cancer in my stomach. He said this in our native language and this is the best way I could translate it to make it make sense. That broke my heart. They've said some horrible things to me but that was way too far. They even dragged my aunt into it, who's now telling me I should be ashamed of myself for how I spoke to my parents and for refusing to help them and that God will punish me. At this point I've gone completely no contact, but I can't lie I feel guilty even though I know I was pushed beyond my limit. Ida? Someone said I was the for not teaching my family how to do anything. That's just not true. I've spent hours trying to teach my parents how to access bills online, sign checks, etc. They always struggle to remember, which really just means they didn't care to learn. I even tried teaching my brother, but he always had plans or wasn't in the mood. I tried. Mother is 50 and father is 65. As for religion, please don't confuse culture with Islam. My parents picked and chose what Islamic values suited them, which is unfortunately very common especially in the Balkans. Islam actually holds women in a very high standards. It's culture that messed everything up. For example, I wasn't allowed to date or have fun because I'd shame the family, and I had to marry a Balkan Muslim. But my brother dated whoever he wanted, including non-Muslim women. My husband wasn't even allowed to sleep in the guest room at our house when we got engaged and slept in hotels until I finally snapped on my parents for that. Yet my brother's girlfriend basically moved in day one and no one blinked. I've been the translator and basically the family employee since I was 10. I've filled out every form, made every call, done everything for my parents, and it just never stopped. I blame myself for this as I should have put my foot down years ago. My husband doesn't like my family and hates my brother. That hatred really cemented when my water broke at 30 weeks and I was in the hospital crying and having a legit mental breakdown thinking I failed my baby. My lovely brother showed up and told me that I must have done something stupid and broke my water myself. My husband dragged him out, and my brother wasn't allowed back. Right now, my husband only knows there was a screaming match and I decided to cut everyone off. He doesn't know the full story because if he did, I know exactly what he'd do, and I'm not trying to go down that road. I know they'll probably show up at some point. I'm mentally preparing for it. Who knows what they'll do at that point? I've mentioned that I would like to move closer to my in-laws, and my husband is on board with that idea. He also talked to me about starting therapy. We were reading the messages and comments together and we both realized I was severely emotionally abused. Update 1. After I went no contact, the calls didn't stop. My phone was blowing up constantly. Then my dad decided to try to call my husband directly. He acted like absolutely nothing happened, all cheerful and casual, as if my brother hadn't just thrown a binder at me over a week ago. I guess my dad thought my husband didn't know what happened. My husband cut him off and told him he knows exactly what happened, and that if my brother ever bothers me again or so much as steps foot on our property, it won't be pretty. Let's just say the conversation ended very quickly after that. A few days later, my uncle and aunt decided to randomly drop by our house unannounced to talk things out. My husband went outside before I even had a chance to react. He absolutely chewed them out, telling them that if helping my parents is so important to them, they should go do it themselves instead of harassing us. They left pretty fast after that. An hour after they left, my parents showed up. My husband did not allow them inside, but they stood at my door yelling at me, saying how disappointed they were in me and how I was disrespectful for talking about family issues with my husband. They called me horrible names that I can't even repeat here. I finally snapped and told them I want nothing to do with them anymore and this would be the last time we speak. They kept going, but I refused to participate in the conversation any longer, and they eventually left after my husband threatened to call the police. When they left, I completely broke down. The things my parents said were vile and cruel. I don't know what I did to deserve this kind of treatment. I expect that kind of behavior from my in-laws, not my parents. Sad truth is, my Mill has been a better and more loving mother to me than my own mom ever has, and that hurts in a way I can't even explain. This happened a few days ago, and since then I've blocked my parents, brother, my uncle, and my aunt. A few other family members have tried reaching out, but the moment I see they're defending my parents, I block them too. I just can't deal with it anymore and I have my own family to worry about. We've decided we'll be moving closer to my in-laws this winter, and no one will know except close friends and family we can trust not to run back to my parents. My first therapy session is scheduled for next week as well. When I opened up fully to my husband and our close friends about my childhood, the look on their faces made me sick. They explained to me that what I went through was not normal and that no parent should ever treat their child the way mine treated me. Emotional abuse wasn't the only kind of abuse I experienced. I won't outright say it, but let's just say that when I was in trouble as a kid, my parents would make me go outside, pick a branch from a tree, cut it, and bring it to them. You can probably guess the rest. This was constant and not the only thing. My childhood was deeply messed up, and I'm only truly realizing the extent of it now. I'm not doing well at the moment, but I'm thankful I have my husband and friends to support me. I really hope therapy will help me heal, but I know it will take a long time. Right now, it feels like I'm just floating in darkness. I can't comprehend why my parents hate me so much. I did everything they ever wanted, even if it compromised my own happiness. It still wasn't enough for them. Update 2. Therapy happened. I sat down thinking I'd run out of words, and somehow I still ended up crying the entire hour. She didn't rush me, didn't try to gotcha shame me into reconciling, didn't tell me family is family. She called what happened to me abuse. She said the panic I get in my chest when my phone lights up with an unknown number is not me being dramatic. It's my body doing exactly what it was trained to do when doors slammed and my name got called. She gave me homework that felt silly at first: write a letter I'll never send, list what I am no longer available for, practice saying no, that doesn't work for me out loud so my own ears get used to hearing me protect myself. I left and sat in my car until I stopped shaking. I went home and told my husband every single thing I remembered. There are memories I've never said out loud to anyone. He listened, then he held me like the floor had dropped out. 2 days later, something new landed in my mailbox that made my stomach drop. It was a notice from a utility company for an account I didn't recognize at my parents' address, with my name and the last 4 digits of my SSN. I thought maybe it was a mistake, some marketing scam. I called and the woman on the phone read off the email on the file. It was my brother's. The install date was 3 weeks ago, days before the blow-up. I didn't even bother confronting anyone. I pulled my credit and stared at a list of things that weren't mine. A phone plan opened last year. An internet account opened this month. A store card from 2 years ago with a balance that's been 90+ days for a while. All tied to their address. All with my SSN. I don't know why I expected my hands to shake while I filed the fraud reports. They didn't. I just moved through it like another one of the forms I've been filling out since I was 10, except, this time it was for me. I froze my credit, printed the affidavits, filed a police report because the utility company required a case number to remove the charges. The officer I spoke to asked if I knew who did it. I said I had a strong suspicion. He asked if I felt safe. I told him I had a toddler. He gave me a case card and told me to save every call, every text, every voicemail. 2 hours after I filed, my brother started calling from a new number. When I didn't answer, he sent one message: turn the internet back on or you'll regret it. I didn't reply. Then his girlfriend's number lit up my screen and I ignored it too. She sent me a paragraph about we didn't know the bill was in your name and the Wi-Fi is for work, and it ended with your parents said you would do this. My husband took my phone and blocked the numbers I hadn't blocked yet. He put our home cameras on live view and set motion alerts to loud. That night, someone pounded on our door at 11:40 p.m. It was the kind of pounding that makes your joints go cold. I looked through the peephole and saw my parents and my brother, hood up, hand jammed in his pocket like he was trying to look intimidating. My mom was crying, but it was that hard, performative cry with no tears that I have memorized from childhood. My dad shouted my name like he owned the deed to my lungs. My husband didn't open the door. He spoke through the doorbell camera. He told them to leave our property. My brother started kicking the door and yelling that I had stolen from them and cut them off from basic needs. My husband called the police and kept the camera rolling. My mom started praying out loud, misquoting whatever she thought would make me feel guilty, and my dad said again that he hopes God gives me a disease that eats me from the inside. The officer who showed up was the same one who took my fraud report. He watched the ring footage and asked if we wanted to press trespassing charges. We said we wanted them documented and warned. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there and stared at my ceiling and tried to name the feeling in my body. It was fear, yes, but underneath it was something new, an anger that didn't make my throat close. A clean anger. Like someone had rolled up a heavy carpet and finally showed me the floor. My therapist squeezed me in the next day for a 30-minute check-in when I messaged her the video. She asked me if I wanted to file for a protective order. I told her I didn't want to escalate. She reminded me that I'm not escalating. I am responding. I filed. I took the binder throwing from last time, the voicemail where my dad wished cancer into my stomach, the texts, the door pounding, the ring footage, the fraud reports. The clerk looked at my stack and said, "You have enough." The judge gave me a temporary order that same afternoon and set a hearing for 2 weeks out. When the papers were served, my phone lit up with explosions from numbers I didn't have blocked yet. "You brought shame. How could you do this to your father? People are talking. Block, block, block." Speaking of people talking, the community got involved because of course they did. Someone must have carried the story to our mosque half true and half spun. I got a call from an unfamiliar number that I almost didn't pick up, but something told me to. It was the imam. He said he'd heard there was a problem and asked, gently, if I would tell him what happened. I did. I told him about the binder, the curses, the utilities in my name, the door pounding at midnight while my kid was asleep. There was a long silence. He told me that cursing your child is a grave thing. He told me he would speak to them. He told me I was not obligated to take abuse. Then he asked if I wanted community mediation. I said no, not right now. He said okay, I'm here if you need me, and I could hear real concern in his voice. I hung up and cried in the kitchen until my husband came and sat on the floor with me. Bills started hitting my parents. A bright red shutoff notice arrived for their gas, forwarded to my house because I was listed as the backup contact in some database I didn't even know existed. A property tax delinquency slip showed up with a late fee that made me want to chew glass because I remember telling my dad exactly when it was due a month ago and him nodding while scrolling through a soccer match on his phone. Then, like clockwork, my aunt called from a blocked number to tell me my father was in the hospital with chest pain. I went quiet. She waited for my breath to hitch and for me to say I'd be there. I said I'm sorry he's not well, I hope the doctors take good care of him, and I will not be coming. Her voice jumped an octave. He could die. I said I hope he recovers. She told me I was a disgrace and then slipped up and admitted, he's been calling everyone saying you ruined us. She hung up on me. My husband took the phone out of my hand and turned it off. The girlfriend reached out again from yet another number and this time she didn't ask for the Wi-Fi. She asked if I knew of anywhere she could go because my brother had smashed her phone and thrown her keys in the yard and she was scared. I can be 3 things at once, furious at her for sitting across from me for a year eating dinner at my parents' table while I handled their life, clear that she is not my responsibility, and compassionate toward a young woman in a bad situation. I sent her the number for a shelter and a local women's center. I told her that if she shows up at my house I will call the police, but if she needs help, these people know how to help. She sent a thumbs up and nothing after that. We made a decision we thought we'd make in December and made it in October. We moved. My mill and Phil showed up with Tupperware and tape and bubble wrap, and my mill fed my child and me in between boxes like she's been preparing for this day my whole life. My husband worked like a machine. I took everything I used to be in charge of for my parents out of my house, folders, notepads, that old leather checkbook cover my dad used to keep just in case. I didn't realize until I put the last box in the car how much weight those objects carried. We signed a lease near my in-laws. I sent our new address to 2 friends and to my therapist. That was it. The day before the hearing, my cousin, the one I thought would parrot my parents, messaged me from a new Instagram account. She said she was sorry she was quiet. She said she remembers my mom making me stand in the kitchen with my hands up for hours while I was in trouble for talking back. She said she saw my dad tell my brother, "It's not a big deal, she's a girl," when I was crying after he threw something at me years ago. She said she's been scared to speak because everyone is scared to speak. She said she wants to be better. I sat on the floor of my new living room and felt something click into place that I didn't know was loose. I told her thank you. I told her I don't know what a relationship with extended family looks like for me now, but I appreciate the truth. The hearing was awful and short at the same time. They split us into rooms. My parents came with my brother. My mom wore grief like perfume, eyes squeezed shut, hand to chest. My dad kept his chin out like he was being inconvenienced by traffic. My brother smirked at me like a child who doodled on a wall and thought it was art. The judge asked questions. I stuck to facts. I played the voicemail where my dad wished cancer on me. I played the door footage where my brother kicked my door and my mother wailed that I was a devil. The judge watched without blinking. He granted a 1-year order. He told them they are not to contact me, my husband, or my child, directly or through third parties. He told them not to come to my home or my work or my child's daycare. He said if they do, they will be arrested. My mom whispered, "Shame," as I walked past and I didn't even look at her. My brother tried to catch my eye for a reaction. I didn't give him one. A week into the new place, I realized I could exhale without checking my phone. My child ran laps from the living room to the kitchen yelling Nana. Because my mill was teaching him how to roll out dough, flour on both of their noses, I woke up early and drank coffee in silence and wrote the letter my therapist asked me to write and won't ever send. I wrote to the little girl who translated the electricity bill at 10 years old while 2 adults pretended they were helpless. I told her she did nothing wrong. I told her that the grown woman she became has a front door that stays closed, a partner who will stand like a wall between her and harm, and a therapist who is teaching her how to live in a body that isn't braced for impact every second of every day. The quiet didn't last forever. The imam called again to tell me he spoke to my parents. He said he told them to repent for the words they said over me. He said my dad insisted none of it counts because he said it in anger. The imam told him that's exactly when words count most. He told me he cannot make them do anything. He said he told them to leave me alone. I said, "Thank you. I am not going back." I got one last curveball I didn't expect. A letter from the bank said my name had been added as authorized signer to my parents' checking account last year. I never agreed to that. I never signed anything. The branch manager asked me to come in. I did, with my husband, and the stillness of my face surprised me when I saw my own name on a signature line that wasn't my handwriting. The manager looked at the form and said, quietly, "This isn't a match." He took copies of my ID and the protective order. He removed my name. He said if I wanted to prosecute the forgery I could. He gave me his card. I walked out with my mouth tasting like pennies and called my therapist in the parking lot and said, "I think I'm done being surprised. I wish I could say I feel strong every day now, that moving and the order fixed everything, but someone can be free and grieving at the same time. There are days I see a woman in the grocery store who looks like my mom from the back and my body moves toward her before my mind can catch up and I have to stand in the canned tomatoes aisle and take a breath until I remember that I do not owe my nervous system to anyone anymore. There are days my child drops a cup and the sound makes me flinch and I have to remind myself there isn't going to be a storm after, just a paper towel and a smile and accidents happen. I am learning what kindness feels like when it is not earned with performance. I am learning how to be a mother without making my child audition for love. I didn't think I would ever say this, but there is a small piece of me that hopes my dad meant it when he told the imam he would think about what he said. Not because I want an apology. An apology won't move the needle on a lifetime. But because I am thinking about my son's future and how much lighter it will be if the men in his family learn how to hold their own guilt without handing it to someone else like a heavy, on-fire thing you don't want to carry. The last thing that happened felt like a movie scene I would have rolled my eyes at if you told me it was coming. I was buckling my son into his car seat outside daycare and looked up to see my brother across the street, half hidden behind a minivan, pretending to scroll his phone while watching me. He wasn't with my parents. He wasn't supposed to be anywhere near me. I pressed the panic button on the key fob and let the horn blare until one of the daycare teachers came out. I pointed. He didn't run. He walked away like he was bored, like he was doing me a favor by leaving. I went inside and asked them to call 911. The officers pulled footage from the daycare cameras and added it to my case. They called him. They told him to stop. The officer called me back and said, "He laughed until I said your protective order has your kid's daycare on it." He hasn't been back since. I'm telling myself the truth now. I didn't leave my family. I left a job I was forced into when I was 10 and fired from whenever I breathed wrong. I left a script written in a language where girls apologize for being born. I left a house where cruelty was rebranded as discipline and help was a leash. I'm building a different house. It's smaller. It's quiet. Sometimes it's too quiet and I have to put music on and dance with my son to remind my body that quiet can be safe. My therapist says trauma is liminal. It doesn't end like a movie, it recedes like a tide. Some days the shoreline is huge and dry and I feel like I can run forever. Some days it creeps up and touches my ankles when I'm not looking. Both things can be true. What's also true is that the tide is finally pulling away from my door. And it's not on me to hold it back for anyone anymore. Update 3. I thought once I moved, the noise would stay on the other side of the city like bad weather you can see but not hear. Then a different kind of thunder rolled in that didn't come from a door or a phone. It came in a beige envelope from a credit bureau with a neat little sentence. "We blocked a recent attempt to open a line of credit in your name due to your freeze. The attempt was yesterday. The store was one I've never shopped at. The address on file was my parents' house. It felt less like fear and more like catching someone's hand still inside the drawer they swore they never touched. The financial crimes detective called me the next day like he already knew the end of this story and was just filling in the middle. He asked me to come in and bring anything I had: texts, screenshots, the bank manager's card, the forged signature copy. He was quiet, not suspicious of me the way my brain was trained to expect authority to be. He looked at the signature and then at my ID, twice, like he wanted to be painfully sure. He said the branch had pulled the application packet from when my name was added as an authorized signer, and it included a photocopy of my passport and my social security card. The passport copy was old. The photo was the one I took at 19 with my hair scraped back and a face that looks more like a duty roster than a person. I knew the copy the second I saw it. It lived in a plastic sleeve in the important papers folder at my parents' house for years because I kept being told, "Don't keep originals, what if you lose them? We'll keep them safe." Safe. That word tasted like metal. He said the bank camera showed a woman signing my name a year ago. Not me. Not my mom either, according to the teller who remembered, because we don't get many women adding themselves with a man standing there saying she doesn't need to read anything. The woman in the footage wore a mask, a hat, and sunglasses even though it was raining. The detective said they requested the high-resolution images. He said if it was my brother's girlfriend, that could be a thread to pull. I thought of her texts. I thought about how far people will go to be chosen. That night, she messaged me again from another number. Her first line was "I'm sorry," and I believed her in the way you believe a match apologizes to dry wood. She said she didn't know it was that serious, that he told her I had given permission, that she was just helping with forms. Then she sent me something I haven't stopped thinking about since, a screenshot of a conversation between her and my brother from months ago where he wrote, "Chill, she owes us. She's used to doing everything. It's not even stealing if it's family." He sent her a photo of my passport from the copy. He wrote, "Practice writing like this." She had circled it with a red marker like she was doing her own private autopsy. She said she still had the envelope with the copies because he forgot it in her car after they went to the bank. She asked me where she should bring it. I told her the police station lobby, not my house, not anywhere near my child. The detective met her. He took the envelope. He recorded her statement. I sat in the car across the street with my hands on my knees and watched her hand over something that used to sit in my parents' living room cabinet like it was a family heirloom. It would be neat if the universe let one firefighter put out one fire at a time, but another one sparked right as that one got oxygen. A knock at 8:30 a.m. that wasn't violent, just orderly. A woman with a soft voice and a badge that said Child Protective Services in sans serif font that made me want to vomit. Anonymous report, she said. Neglect, she said. Concerns of domestic violence, drug use, a child left alone for hours and crying. My vision narrowed like I was looking down a pinhole. My husband put a hand on my back like you do when you're walking on ice and you don't want the person in front of you to slip. I invited her in. I showed her the protective order. I showed her the pantry with cereal and a ridiculous variety of fruit snacks my mother-in-law keeps buying because he likes choices. I asked my son to show her his favorite book. He ran to his room and brought out a board book with a broken spine and thrust it into her hands like an offering. She smiled at him with her whole face. She asked him who takes care of him. He said, "Mama. Dada. Nana." She looked around and looked at me and said, "These calls happen when families are changing," like she wanted to choose her words the way you choose a path around broken glass. She said she'd have to document the visit and talk to daycare. She did. Daycare said we're the people who bring extra snacks for kids whose parents forget. Case closed as unfounded. It took 2 days, but in my body it took longer. I slept with one ear on like a dog the rest of the week. The detective moved faster than my fear did. He called and said the prosecutor was picking up the case for identity theft and forgery. He said the girlfriend's statement and that screenshot were corroborating details. He said the bank provided the footage. He asked me if I wanted to submit a victim impact statement. I sat down to write and realized I didn't want to talk about numbers. I wrote about what it is to be 10 years old in a bank, translating words like liability and non-sufficient funds like their colors. I wrote about my father telling me to write his name in cursive over and over until it was smooth. I wrote about getting mail that makes your stomach fall through the floor you just discovered. I wrote that I want the paper trail to exist so my son never has to argue with a ghost about whether it happened. I printed it and my hands didn't shake. They arrested my brother on a Wednesday afternoon while he was driving. They called me to tell me before I saw it from someone else. He texted me from a different number 10 minutes before they took him in and wrote, "This is your final chance to fix this, and then, I hope your kid gets sick like you," and then nothing. I saved it and sent it to the detective. The prosecutor filed a violation of the protective order tacked onto the fraud charges. I didn't feel triumph when I heard. I felt like someone had finally set down a heavy bag I've been holding so long that my fingers forgot how to straighten. I went to the bathroom and cried so quietly I probably wouldn't have woken a sleeping cat. Then I wiped my face and packed my kids' lunch. My parents must have heard within an hour because my aunt's blocked number called and left a voicemail that started with a prayer and ended with a threat. That old script, the one where the elders talk like you're the ocean they can bless or curse at will, but never learn how water moves. The imam called again, voice tired in a way that made me realize he's been holding more than just my family's nonsense. He said he had spoken to them and to my uncle, and his advice was simple, and it was the thing they refused to do. Stop. Stop calling. Stop sending people. Stop trying to make the town square their courtroom. He said he told them to repent for the words they said over me. He said my father argued that he only said it because he was angry. He told him that's exactly when people show their heart. He said he would support me publicly if I needed it. I said, thank you. I am not looking for a public anything. I am looking for a quiet kitchen, a safe door, a childhood my son won't have to therapy his way out of. The night after the arrest, someone put a folded note under my windshield wiper while my car was parked outside our building. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't in their handwriting. It was my cousin's, the same one who messaged me on Instagram from a new account weeks ago. She must have found out my car somehow. We park on a side street. The note said, he told people you took money from them. He's told this lie for so long he believes it. She wrote about the time my mom made me stand with my knees bent against the wall with a book on my head while she recited verses that had nothing to do with discipline. She wrote, I am telling the truth now even if it gets me cut out. I wanted to be scared that she knew where I lived, but I felt grateful deep in a part of me I thought was dead. I texted her thank you for my blocked phone. She didn't respond. Maybe that was her boundary. Maybe that was all she could do. Maybe for her it was a revolution. The prosecutor offered my brother a plea, misdemeanor forgery, misdemeanor identity theft, restitution, and a longer term of no contact rolled into my existing order. No jail if he pled. Probation. Classes. A record so he can't just pretend this never happened. I didn't want a trial. I didn't want to sit in a fluorescent courtroom and listen to someone argue that taking my name wasn't violence because it didn't leave a bruise. I told the prosecutor I would accept if it meant the paper says our names and the truth in the same sentence. He accepted. He pled. The judge read the terms and my brother said yes like a man ordering a sandwich. My father didn't look at me. My mother pinched a tissue like she wanted to wring water from it. When it was over, my brother looked at me like he was waiting for the old version of me to hand him a bottle of water and explain how to appeal. I walked out. The air smelled cold and clean. The CPS case may have been closed, but the pettiness wasn't. An email went to my HR from a burner account claiming I was unstable and a drug user and stealing from elderly parents. It was like reading a parody of a person who thinks everything is transferable by blood. If they're thieves, I must be, too. My boss called me in and closed her office door and said, we get these sometimes when people set boundaries with relatives, which is both the saddest and most relieving sentence I've heard this year. She told me they documented it and would keep an eye on anything security related. I walked back to my desk and felt like I had grown new skin that fit. We installed things in our home that aren't discussed but that changed the tenor of my days. A cheap little safe that locks with a code only I know, a drawer that isn't a shrine to any dysfunctional family's idea of important, a charging station in our bedroom where my phone sleeps all night far from the door. My therapist started EMDR with me. I thought the bilateral tapping would annoy me. It didn't. It felt like someone sweeping inside my mind with a very small broom. The first memory we processed wasn't the binder or the door or the copied passport. It was me at 13 standing in a grocery store all while my mother told a woman we knew, she's difficult, and laughed like my difficulty was a funny hat I'd put on myself. The tapping didn't erase it, of course, it just made it recede to where it belongs, a thing that happened, not a thing happening now. I went to the mosque on a Tuesday afternoon when it was empty except for an old woman who smiled with all her teeth and asked if I was new. I said no, I said yes, I said, I'm here, which felt like the only correct answer. I prayed 2 rakas and sat there until I felt something in my chest loosen that I didn't know I was clenching. I didn't ask for my parents to change. I asked for my house to stay a house and not a stage. I asked that my son never learn the taste of walking on eggshells. They tried one more thing that made my stomach ice over before it thawed. A man I don't know but who clearly owes my father something showed up at my in-laws' house while my husband was at work and I was upstairs putting my son down for a nap. He was polite, in that propriety that is more pressure than kindness. He said my father sent him to negotiate. My mother-in-law's eyes went sharp in a way I have only seen when she's cutting fish. She told him, this is not a bazaar, and closed the door. She called my husband called me, I called the detective, and the detective called the man back from the number he left. Evidently he didn't realize there was a protective order that covers third-party contact. He knows now. He won't be back. My mother-in-law made tea and we sat at the table and she told me about the time when she first got to this country and couldn't ask for the price of carrots without her voice shaking because she was afraid of being laughed at. We survived by borrowing each other's courage, she said, and pushed another cookie toward me like courage could be sugared. I heard through the grapevine, the kind you didn't ask to plant, that my father had a minor heart attack. A real one, I know because my cousin, the same one who slid the note under my wiper, texted, he's okay. They put in a stent. She didn't tell me to come. She didn't ask me to break my order. She just told me because she thought I'd want to know. I sat with that news and felt 2 truths at the same time. I hope he lives a long life. I will not spend that life next to him. Compassion doesn't have to come with a key. My brother's girlfriend, or ex, or something that looks like a ghost of a relationship, messaged me once more. It was a photo of a small suitcase and a cat carrier in the backseat of a lift and the caption, I left. I sent her the number of a legal aid clinic because she said he'd put a bill in her name too, and a hotline that can help with a restraining order if she wants one. She sent a heart and then radio silence. I am not building a bridge to my abusers by proxy. I can want a girl to not be harmed and still not invite the storm into my kitchen. I changed my phone number. It felt smaller than it should for the relief it brought. I picked a ringtone that doesn't sound like anything I've ever heard in my parents' house. I put my old number in a password manager and deleted it from my mind. When a blocked call happens now, it rings into a void I can't hear. The absence of that specific anxiety is like losing a sound you didn't realize your ears were straining to process. We have moments of normal that used to feel like foreign films I couldn't read the subtitles to. My son spilled a whole glass of milk, and instead of a voice telling me to brace, my husband and I said at the same time, "Towel?" And then laughed like normal people laugh when their kitchen smells like a cow. My child asks me at bedtime, "Who is your mama?" In that earnest way toddlers ask questions they already know the answer to. I tell him that Nana is Dada's mom, and that my mama is taking a timeout far away because grown-ups sometimes need timeouts when they can't be kind. He accepts that and goes back to tapping his feet against the crib slats like a tiny drummer who pays no rent. Later, when the house is quiet, I whisper to that girl inside me who still flinches, "I am my mama now," and it doesn't feel like a betrayal. It feels like a promise. There was one more trip to court, not for a fight but for a piece of paper that stretches the piece further down the road. The judge extended the protective order to cover the length of my brother's probation and then some, folded into the plea. My father's lawyer tried to argue that family matters should be handled privately. The judge looked at him over his glasses and said, "It has been handled privately long enough." That one sentence went into my bones like iron. I am not naive enough to think this is over like a song ends. It will sit in my life like a low hum, quieter some days, louder others. I'm getting good at hearing the difference between a trigger and a threat. I'm learning that peace isn't the absence of noise but knowing which sounds belong in your house. We hung a new framed print in our entryway. It's a simple thing, just a watercolor of a door half ajar with light pouring through the crack onto a floor that looks like ours. When I look at it, I think of all the doors I've closed that were never meant to be open to me in the first place. I think of the ones I'm holding open now with my foot because a little boy is running through with sticky hands and a laugh big enough to flood a room. If you're looking for some grand reconciliation, there isn't one here. What I have instead are small mercies that stack into a life, a block button that isn't lonely anymore, a judge who believed what they saw instead of what they were told, a bank manager who whispered "I'm sorry" even though none of this was his fault, an imam who used his voice where it mattered, a mother-in-law who guards my peace like it's on loan from God, a husband who answers the door with his spine straight, a therapist who hands me tools that look like toys until I try them and realize they pull bricks from my chest. My father will tell people a version of the story where I am a witch and a thief. My mother will lay her head on the table and moan in a way that makes neighbors close their blinds. My brother will be bored before he is sorry. My aunt will pray curses that bounce off my windows like moths. None of those are my jobs anymore. My job is to pack my son's lunch, to answer my phone when it shows a number saved under a real name, to sign my own name and mean it, to sit on a floor with my back to a door that locks from the inside, and to keep learning that love doesn't sound like a fist on wood. The tide isn't gone, but it's finally far enough out that I can hear something else, my own feet on a dry floor, moving forward.